Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to return to Copenhagen in Denmark, one of my favourite places in the world, one of the best beer cities in the world these days in my opinion as well, and we're going to return to a brewery that is featured on the channel once before. The last beer that I had from these guys was very nicely done. I've known about this brewery for quite some time, but to be honest, it is a little bit difficult to get a hold of beers from this brewery, although we are seeing a few making their way over here into Sweden now, which is welcome. I've told you many a time before, the Danish have some really good craft beers these days, and I love reviewing them for you here on the channel. So fingers crossed this one carries on in the same vein as the last beer we had from them, and hopefully it makes for an interesting review for you guys as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Gørløse, which is to the northwest of central Copenhagen, and we're going to have a look at my second beer from Ølsnedkeren. So this particular beer is called Tidligt Silde. It comes in at 6.3% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy IPA. So yeah, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. The last beer that I had from these guys was called Carl Smart. That was another kind of hazy type IPA as well, if memory serves me correctly. And I do actually have a Berliner Weisse from these guys in the fridge to take a look at as well. So you'll see me review that over the next couple of weeks, I would say. But yeah, this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the local Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget for June of 2021. We always get a few Danish and Norwegian things through that, of course. But yeah, definitely cool to see these guys release another beer over here. Hopefully we get a few more over the next few months, and hopefully this one turns out to be an interesting beer as well. So yeah, awesome. So I want to dedicate this review to two things. First, the good result that Scotland got against England, but more importantly to Christian Eriksen, who I read just before starting filming this had been let out of hospital, the Rigshospital in Copenhagen. So speedy recovery to him. Hopefully he can get back playing, but how likely that is, I honestly don't know. But that was a horrible thing to see in the Denmark-Finland game, but hopefully he makes a full recovery and we can see him playing again sometime soon. He was a cracking player actually. I've seen him a couple of times, and he's always been he's always been just, you know, machine in the midfield. So hopefully we can see him playing again at some point. So yeah, two toasts in this one to the Scotland result against England, and most importantly to Christian Eriksen, since this is a Danish beer, of course. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Ølsnedkeren before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regularly, of course, because I live so close to Denmark and I love my Danish craft beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then. So, Ølsnedkeren, as it might sound, or Ølsnedkeren, as you actually pronounce it in Danish. As I've told you before, Danish has really strange pronunciation. Easy enough for me to read as a Swedish speaker, but to listen to it and try and speak it is another story. But yeah, Ølsnedkeren was founded originally as a bar in Nørrebro on Griffenfeldsgade in Copenhagen back in 2012. But Ølsnedkeren literally translates into English as the beer carpenter. So yeah, basically the beer carpenter brewery, if you like. But the two men behind this company are Simon Toft Hansen and Tobias Rosenving Riek. So the bar was started by Simon, and he began brewing beer in the basement, and this was actually served from the taps. A bit later on, in 2013, Tobias, who runs the beer brand Bryggeren, which literally translates into English as the brewer, began brewing his beers at Ølsnedkeren as well. And he gradually became more active in Ølsnedkeren and kind of formally joined the company. But a bit later on in 2014, Stronzo went bankrupt, and so at this point he and Simon teamed up and they took over this premises, which is a former dairy up in Gørløse, and this is where they're still brewing their beers today. But soon after this, they began releasing their beers first in bottles and then in cans, and over the last few years they've continued to expand this brewery's capacity and produce more beers. Of course, Dry and Bitter also brew their beers up there. Gamma Brewing brewed their beers there until quite recently. They've now got their own facility. And a few other breweries have brewed stuff there as well, like Bad Seed and Rooster, and I think Ghost brewed there a couple of times as well, if I remember rightly. But as of June 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 530 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they've also released about 20 beers under the Brugeren name as well. I actually have one back home in Scotland that I will need to see about reviewing for you the next time that I'm home. That's an Imperial Stout, if I remember rightly, but I will need to see about reviewing that one for you on my next trip back to the motherland. So you can look forward to that. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Ølsnedkeren, other than the fact that they have 2 bars, one in Aalborg and then one, I believe, in Copenhagen as well. So you can go and check those out. But yeah, that's it. If you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the different goings on. The Ølsnedkeren and Mig Ølsnedkeren Bar both have different social media outlets, so you can follow both of those if you really want to. But you can also check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself then. So this one, as I mentioned to you, is a 6.3% New England IPA. It's hopped with Citra and Sabro, and it's got a malt base of Pilsner malts, oat malts, wheat malts, flaked oats, and a light caramel malt. But the name of this one, Tidligt og Silde, Tidligt, of course, literally translates as early, if you like, but this is a phrase, and it means like, I think it is basically the same as saying like time and again, you know, it refers like something incessant, something that keeps happening. So yeah, Tidligt og Silde, I think it just literally translates as like time and again. That's probably the most accurate phrase. Phrases, of course, don't really translate all that well between languages. This is something when you learn a language, as I did with Swedish, you know, you just have to memorize these little intricacies and things like that. But yeah, 440ml can. This one, there you can see the Ølsnedkeren beer carpenter symbol on the back with the hop flower there. But I think I paid either 50 or 55 Swedish krona for this one. 50 seems reasonable. I think that's what we usually pay for a single IPA that's imported from Denmark. So that translates to €5 for the can, somewhere in the region of £4.50 sterling, and I guess about $5.50, $5.75 American for those of you watching over there. But yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we'll get on with the tasting. The Tidligt og Silde, 6.3%, sorry. New England hazy IPA from Ølsnedkeren in Gørløse in Denmark. But yeah, Citra and Sabro, I know Citra very well, about 14% alpha acid, lots of nice juicy kind of mango flavours out of it, and a good kind of citrusy component, quite a complex hop, which makes it ideal for single hop beers. And Sabro is a little bit newer to the market. I think that's 15 or 16% alpha acid, gives you a kind of lovely orangey sort of thing, and a wee bit of coconut, and you can smell the Sabro off this one right away as soon as you open it. But yeah, both of those hops American, of course, and I know that my friend Harry at Blue Nose Beer Reviews, he absolutely loves Sabro, of course. But yeah, that's it. That's all you really need to know about the beer before we actually have a taste and a look at it and things properly. So before the head disappears, you can see that this beer is poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. That's faded away to just be a very, very thin foamy layer, but it's leaving a little bit of a thicker foamy ring around the edge of the glass. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass as well, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. But yeah, overall it looks pretty nice. In terms of the colour, this one's actually a kind of more rich yellow. This one, it looks like a little bit like a kind of more mixed tropical fruit juice in terms of its colour, you know, like a kind of peach juice or mango and peach juice, something like this. Really looks something along that lines. But remember, the colour of your beer is determined by 1, the type of malts that you use. This usually determines the magnitude of your colour. The fact that this one's a little bit more amber is probably due to the likes of the light caramel that's in here. The length of your wort boil can also affect this. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. A New England IPA like this is going to undergo a wort boil of somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes, I guess. But also adjuncts and barrel aging can play a role in determining the colour of your beer. But in this beer, those factors, of course, are not particularly at play. In terms of the level of haziness from this beer, it's actually fairly decent for a 6.3% beer. Now, the level of haze in your beer is determined by the oat content, the wheat content, and to a degree the yeast as well. And it just varies from brewery to brewery and from recipe to recipe pretty much. So theoretically speaking, as you go up the alcohol scale, you should get a little bit more haze out of it. But you'll see after trying beers from quite a few different breweries, that is not always the case. But yeah, certainly in terms of appearance, this one looks pretty nice. It's got a decent level of haze to it. One of the more ambery leaning New England IPAs I've had in recent times. So I have to say I'm very curious to see what it has in store for us. But nothing particularly surprising about its appearance. I think it's about time we had a look at the aroma of this one to see how we get on. So I can tell you just from the whiff I've had of it since it's come out of the can, it does smell pretty bloody nice. So let's go for it then. Let's have a look at this. Oh, that does smell very nice. It does smell very, very nice. It's lovely, that. So in terms of the, in terms of just a general first picture of this one, it comes across as a little bit more barley malt leaning in a sense. You do get, for me, there's quite a little bit of a kind of biscuity, slightly caramelly sort of thing coming out of it, which is nice. As I've told you in previous reviews, I think there's 6 directions you can take a New England IPA. It can be more sort of yeasty and farmhousey. It can be a little bit more rye leaning and grainy. It can be wheaty and bitey. It can be oaty and creamy. It can be a little bit more barley leaning and bready, or it can be a little bit more sort of caramelly and malty and things like this. And this one smells as if it's got a little bit of a few different things, but quite often you get beers showing a few different characteristics within these 6 sort of categories that I've mentioned to you. But this one certainly strikes me at first impression of being more kind of malty and things like that. But it smells lovely. I'm going to say that straight away. And I'm a bit of a sucker for orangey leaning IPAs, as you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time. So the fact that this has got Sabro in it, probably going to enjoy this. And it's also got a wee bit of a caramel malty sort of thing, which I also enjoy too. But yeah, let's break down the aroma for you then and just go for it. So the malty side of things then, so you can smell a nice sort of white bready base to this beer, definitely. There's a bit of bread crust in there for sure. But to me, there is quite a bit of a straight up caramel coming out of this one, which isn't surprising. There's a bit of McVitie's digestive in there, which is good as well. And you can get, at the back of the nose, you can get a little touch of bitiness from the wheat. But I think the more that you smell this beer, the more the wheaty side of it kind of thickens up a wee bit. You can smell a little touch of the creaminess from the oat, but not overly much, I don't think. This really comes across as being a little bit more wheaty and barley malt leaning in the aroma, and as I say, it leans to that kind of caramelly side of the New England IPA spectrum, which is quite interesting. But yeah, the aroma coming off of this, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, this one, in terms of its malty side of the aroma, it gets a big thumbs up from me. Like I say, nice little bit of bitey wheat at the back of the nose. I think it does get a little bit more bitey the further you go into it. Smooth bready notes, bread crust. You can smell a wee bit of the creaminess from the oat in there, but as I say, good little bit of caramel and a McVitie's digestive biscuity thing for me. I think it'll be a little bit more complex than that in the actual flavour though. But on the hoppy side of things, it's got a nice big green component to it. I would definitely say that. So there's a big floral aromatic sort of thing with this when you've got a 15-16% alpha acid hop and a 14% alpha acid hop. This is to be expected. New England IPAs though tend to rely on later additions to the wort boil. Remember, the earlier you add the hops into the wort boil, the more likely, you get more bitterness out of them essentially. And as you go across the wort boil, as you go through the wort boil, there's a trade-off there in terms of picking up more flavour and aroma from these different hops. But yeah, the aroma of the the aroma of this one on the green side of things is nice. So there's a wee bit of earthiness in there, absolutely, but it's quite a smooth earthiness, I would say. A lovely big bright floral aromaticity. I wouldn't describe it as overly spicy. That is something, again, that makes me think it's late edition hops that are in this, and that would make sense for the style. We've had this experience before, but there's also a nice bit of a kind of brighter grassy element coming out on the nose as well. It's got a wee bit of a citrusy zest, and that is a characteristic that you would expect of the Citra hop, I would say, rather than Sabro in my experience. But yeah, I think that covers the green component. A nice big floral leaning beer, this one. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, as I always say, the fruity esters coming out of the hops. For me, yeah, you get a nice big oily orangey character coming out of this one. And it's quite a bright orange as well, which is interesting. You can smell a little bit of that kind of coconutty thing from the Sabro under there as well. It's a very distinctive hop, actually. Big sort of juicy oranges and coconutty qualities. But you also get a good bit of the big mango coming out from the Citra. I think when you put Citra with Sabro, it doesn't come across as quite complex as it does with other hops, to be honest with you. But in fairness, you do maybe get a wee touch of the lemon lime. Pardon me, you do get a wee touch of the lemon lime out of it. But yeah, I think it's quite a big juicy mango you get out of here, a big sort of more oily orange, bit of the coconut, and then there is a wee touch of a slightly lemon limey thing mixing in with the grassy side of the beer. But yeah, overall it smells lovely. This smells as if it's going to be right up my street. So let's just put the rest of this in the glass, and we can have a go at this beer then. Let me just check that it's lined up nicely. I think it is, so that my OCD is happy. But let's get stuck into this one. So yeah, this one is the Tidligt Silde, a New England hazy IPA, 6.3% ABV from Ølsnedkeren and Gørløse over to the northwest of Copenhagen. A big toast, of course. Well done to the Scotland national team for a good result against England, but most importantly, get well soon to Christian Eriksen. Awesome player. Let's hope we see him again soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, it's fairly solid, that. I'm going to say straight away, you can taste with this one, it's just getting towards the end of its good period of drinkability. We can say that. Because one thing you'll always notice with these New England IPAs is that what tends to happen in the malt base is that they tend to thicken up a wee bit, and you can feel just, it's almost like the wheat and the oats just kind of, it's almost like they make this almost like you get this almost slightly porridgey type thing coming out of some of these beers, and you can feel that starting in this one. Now, it is one of the things with Systembolaget. Of course, I'm not sure how long these beers would have been sitting in the warehouse, because they've got, of course, Systembolaget have a warehouse here in Skåne somewhere. I'm not sure how long they would have been sitting around. The import company might have been holding on onto them for a little while as well. I'm not sure exactly when this beer would have been canned and things like this. It says the 10th of the 3rd, 21, and it actually says here, it's best before the 10th of May 2022. So yeah, that's interesting. But I suppose this is the other thing. Probably what will be happening is they'll brew a batch of this beer, and then they put it in the cans, and then they'll give it to it will sit in the cans, of course, to mature a little bit. So it's been in the cans about 3 months. I don't know how long you really have to let these mature in the cans. I think it's probably like 2 weeks or something, but the brewery will hold on to these and figure out when exactly is best to release them, if you like. But that is one of the things. If this beer was canned on the 10th of March, and I'm drinking it for you now on the 19th of June, just after midnight on the 19th, for the 19th of June, this one, it kind of makes sense that it's getting towards the end of its good period of drinkability. So we need to think about that. This is one of the criticisms I have of Systembolaget and what they do, because the import companies have to be a little bit better with this, getting the beers into Sweden, of course, and then Systembolaget have to be a little bit more flexible in terms of getting these things out on the shelf, because I would guess if this has been canned in in March, it's probably been released in April, and then we're not getting it until the June release. So that's somewhere between 2 months and 6 weeks that this beer is sitting in its good state. So yeah, Systembolaget and the import companies need to get their backsides together with these things. But as it stands, it's still in fairly good condition, so we'll go with it. We'll go with it. We will go with it with this one. But it does come across pretty solidly. It is still in a fairly nice drinkable condition, but you can taste that little bit of, you know, the sort of almost porridgey type thing coming out of it. You can feel a little bit of that coming. That's one of the risks that you always take with imported IPAs here in Sweden, which is a bit unfortunate. It's always better, you know, if different breweries were saying, oh, what styles should we do? If you're sending beers to the Nordic countries other than Denmark, I would say, you know, send more malty leaning beers. Don't, you know, be very careful about sending your IPAs over this way, unless a good chunk of it's going into the restaurants, of course, because they're not going to get there at their optimum freshness. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this beer then. So, straight away with this one, you can feel that nice, kind of smooth, white bready quality just blanketing the middle of your tongue. You can feel the nice kind of, you can feel the sort of wheaty, bready base in this one, which is nice. So you've got a sort of wheaty base layer to this beer, and that sits there. On top of that, in the kind of middle third of your palate, if you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a wee bit of a bread crusty sort of thing there. But sitting on top of that, you can feel the oats just kind of forming a very smooth and slightly thicker layer. This beer really thickens up a little bit more the further that you go into the aftertaste with it. But certainly in the middle of in the very dead centre of your palate, you can feel there is a wee bit sitting on top of the oats. There's a nice kind of how do you say? There is a nice kind of creamy sort of Werther's Original butter candy type thing out of this one. So yeah. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of butter candy sort of thing with this one. And I do think that goes together. It sort of just adds a wee bit more depth to the beer in a sense. It sort of sweetens up the oats in a sense, which is quite interesting. But in the dead centre of your palate, it's interesting because you do get a bit of that straight up oily caramel, which I do like. Now, if you go to the back half of that middle third of your palate, you can feel a wee bit of the Pilsner malty crispness to this beer. And as I always say, Pilsner malt's a bit of an annoying one to describe because it's more about the vibe that it gives the beer and the sort of feel rather than the actual flavour. But quite often it will contribute a wee bit to a kind of biscuity sweetness. But you can feel that wee bit of Pilsner malty dryness from the dead centre of your palate going back towards the back half of the going towards the back half of that, how would we say, to the back half of that middle third of your palate. So I do like that about this one for sure. But yeah, you'll also notice as you move further out towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate, you get more of a kind of biscuity, a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing out of this one. And I can certainly appreciate that about this beer as well. So it gets a thumbs up from me. In that regard, I think the middle third of your palate in this one does go together quite well, and I think once your mouth adjusts to this one, you get a little bit less of that slightly almost, you know, that slightly thickening, oaty, wheaty sort of thing, that slightly almost porridgey type thing that you get out of this beer. There's only a little bit of that as your mouth adjusts to this beer, but that is one of the ways of telling roughly how old a New England IPA is, but it does work very nicely. So, yeah, I do like that about this for sure, but let's focus on that back third of your palate then. So as I say, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel a bit of a bready build-up, again a bit of a doughy bready build-up, wee bit of bread crust, then into that back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of a more wheaty bitiness underneath, there's a bit of a kind of thicker quality on top of that, you can feel some of the oaty smoothness in there too, but sitting on top of that back third of your palate, of course, you can feel that nice, taller, slightly taller, kind of more airy, yeasty quality coming out of the beer. So when you start at the back of your palate, the sort of height of the flavour is kind of like this, and it just condenses down, and as you go into the middle third of your palate, it is just a wee bit more kind of squashed together in a sense, which I do quite like. So you get a good variety of flavour in this beer, but certainly one of the sweeter New England IPAs on the malty side of things that I've come across over the last little while. But yeah, I think it works quite nicely, to be honest with you. So in terms of the hoppy side of things then, on the back corners of the palate you do get a little touch of earthiness in there. You're always going to get that. As you move further forward it's a wee bit kind of herbal, but then as you reach the front corners of your palate you can feel it getting progressively more kind of floral and aromatic, of course. But yeah, I think the green component of this beer, it's actually well balanced between the citrusy, grassy side of things and the more kind of floral aromatic part of the brewery, but part of the beer rather. But yeah, you get a nice floral aromaticity, and it's quite a deep floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate. But as you go round the front curve of the tongue, it's got a little bit of a lighter, grassy, citrusy sort of thing to it, a bit of a zesty kind of thing too, which I think works quite nicely. And that lingers into the aftertaste, of course. But yeah, the green component adds a little bit of bite to the beer, I would say. On the front third of your palate then, so this is of course where you get the fruity juicy esters. Border region between front third and middle third of your beer, again you get a bit of a bready build up, a wee bit of a bread crusty note in there. Then the base of that front third of your palate, it's a smooth sort of wheaty kind of element in there. There's a wee bit of oatiness as well, which I think is great. But yeah, I think it is quite nice actually. In that sense, so good base, but then on top of that of course you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters kind of roll their way out of the beer. So towards the back of that front third of your palate, I think it's all about the citra. You do get that slightly more pungent passion fruity note coming out of it, but as you move further forward you get a nice big oily mango, and then perhaps just a wee bit of a slightly apricot-y note sitting underneath. But then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you've got a more oily orangey note out of this one, and it's got a bit of the more oily orange that you would expect of, say, Amarillo, pardon me, but then it's also got a little bit of the lighter kind of tangerine, mandarin-y type thing that you might expect of, say, a Zaka or Mosaic. So Sabro's an interesting hop in this sense. It's quite interesting in how it goes about its business on the fruity side of things, but you do also get a little bit of that kind of coconutty type thing coming out from underneath the fruity part of the beer. So I really can appreciate how that one goes together in this beer. So yeah, this is a fairly solid IPA. As I say, not in its prime condition, and I think this is something that I would criticise Systembolaget and the import companies for. I'm not sure who it is that imports the Danish beers over the border here into Sweden. I'll need to check that. But yeah, they need to try and get these into. This one probably should have been released, to be honest, in May instead of June. So there has to be better planning with these beers, I think, definitely. But on the mouthfeel side of things, then, what I would say about this beer, this one's definitely pushing toward the kind of top end of mid-bodied in the general beer spectrum for me. It's one of the sort of more oily New Englands that I've come across in recent times. Yeah, it's at the more oily end of the New England spectrum for me. But yeah, mid-bodied beer, smooth carbonation, as I say, a bit oily, a little bit of slickness in there too. Malty base of this one, and the yeasty components are quite thick at the same time, a little bit sort of matted and thick in a sense, but you've also got a good little bit of a sweeter caramelly note, a little bit of a kind of biscuity note, as I say. So there is a sweeter edge to this beer. You pick that up right away in the aroma, and that lingers there into the aftertaste, but quite a smooth backbone, this one. And in terms of hoppy bitterness, there's about there's about 30-ish IBUs to this, which I think is the standard. But remember, this is one of my weaker points of beer reviewing. But on the fruity juicy side of things, I would say it's quite an oily fruity character you get out of this one. You've got a wee mix of tropical and more citrusy fruit coming out of this beer. But overall, I think it works out really well. So thumbs up to Ølsnedkeren for this one. I think this is another solid beer, but like I say, this would have been in better condition if this had been released for the May the May instalment of Local Småskaligt. The other thing to remember with this is that it actually took a wee while for Systembolaget to process my order this time. It took them about 10 days to do it, which is quite unusual actually. Usually they're a lot faster than that. So yeah, not sure exactly why that was, but there you go, just happens sometimes. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about this beer. It's been nice to try it, nice to return to Ølsnedkeren as well. I hope that you guys have enjoyed my review for this one. Let me know your own thoughts on the beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Ølsnedkeren. Hopefully we can review a few more beers from these guys soon. I do have a Berliner Weisse in the fridge from these guys, like I said, but we'll see about getting a few beers in a slightly fresher state from Copenhagen once the border reopens. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media and I'll catch you guys very soon. This one was the Tidligt Silde, a 6.3% New England IPA from Ølsnedkeren in Gørløse, just to the northwest of Copenhagen. Slange, Skål, cheers, and see you in the next review.